For everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Mike Mariano. I was one of the co-chairs for the Asian American Pacific Gala dinner tonight, along with Mike Lee. I'd like to welcome everyone here. Hope you've been enjoying Penn Spectrum so far. It's been a great event, and we loved working on it and helping out with the planning. I am here tonight to introduce our Master of Ceremony. We're lucky to have Amna Nawaz, who is a producer and video journalist with NBC News, currently based in Washington, D.C. She has worked in the Middle East, South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Europe, and her work has appeared on NBC Nightly News, The Today Show, Dateline NBC, MSNBC, and MSNBC.com. Prior to joining NBC News, she worked for ABC News Nightline. She got her degree in politics, philosophy, and economics from the University of Pennsylvania. Yeah, let's give it up. And a Master of Science degree with honors in comparative politics from the London School of Economics. So I'd like to introduce Amna.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have an excuse to be back here at Penn, as I'm sure you all are too. This weekend for me, as I'm sure it is for you, is a chance to re-engage and reconnect, and really to come back to a place where I'm sure a lot of us had some of our most defining experiences. For me, Penn was one of those places where I really kind of formed my own identity. Much of it, I have to admit, was formed down at Franklin Field, where I was captaining the field hockey team my senior year. That was in 2000-2001 season, and you'll be amazed to know I actually led us to, I think it was like a 5-10 record that year. So yeah, it was a good year. It's a character building year more than anything, I think. I think that's what we call it. Since then, you'll be proud to know the team has done much better. I'm sure because of the foundation I helped to lay that year. Apart from my awesome athletic achievements, what I really liked about Penn was I learned here how to embrace every part of myself. I'm sure you guys have seen this in your time here and in your weekend here. Penn is a place where diversity matters, and it's not in one of those check-the-box kind of ways. So I'm proud to be here to be able to emcee this gala tonight, and mostly to introduce our keynote speaker, who I'm going to have the honor of interviewing in just a moment. Shailesh Rao from Google India is joining us tonight. Shailesh, why don't you come up and let me embarrass you with an introduction. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to be here today to have the opportunity to interview Shailesh. He's a man whose company combines two of the most powerful forces in the global business community today, Google and India. Since 2007, Shailesh Rao has served as the managing director of Google India, where he also manages the company's media business across Asia Pacific and Japan. Previously, he served as the director of local search based at Google's Mountain View, California headquarters. And of course, we can proudly claim him as one of our own. Shailesh has a BA with honors from UPenn, a BS from Wharton with a concentration in finance. Let's give it up for Penn. Thank you. And later went on to get an MBA from some other school. Sounds like Schmelog. Shailesh is presently chairman of the Internet and Mobile Association of India, a member of the board of directors of the U.S.-India Business Council. According to the Economic Times 2010 Power List, he is the 5th most powerful multinational CEO. Businessweek has also named him to its India's most powerful people list. I could go on, but you're going to learn a lot more listening to him than me. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Shailesh Rao. So we'll start at the beginning. Clearly, the launching pad for your success, University of Pennsylvania. How did you choose it, and why did you choose to come here?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people will. The honest answer would be that when you're young and you're not entirely sure where you want to go and what's going to be best for you, you kind of talk to a lot of friends, you talk to family, and then you kind of go with your gut and you make an educated guess. I was drawn to Penn from the beginning. Something felt right. I was debating between another Ivy League school and Penn, and ultimately decided to come to Penn. And it was absolutely the right decision for me. It was 4 of the most important years of my life, 4 of the most enjoyable years of my life. And I think what I liked about it is some of the things we're celebrating here today, which is a microcosm of the world's cultures. It felt like being here was being in a little fishbowl of the world where you can interact with everyone and anything. And that seemed very exciting, very stimulating for an Indian American kid who grew up in the suburbs of Pittsburgh.
And of course, Penn has a very strong Asian student body. I'm not sure if it was the same when you were here. I think it's 25% by some estimates
Wow.
now. During your time here, how big a role was your cultural identity in your experience here at Penn?
It was a really big part. I have to say, a lot of the essays I wrote to apply to Penn dealt with challenges of identity, Indian, American, how to reconcile the two, draw from it as a source of strength, and sometimes the challenges it presented. And I think being at Penn, like for yourself, it was a place where I think I really was able to understand who I am and develop a certain sense of self-confidence from that. And the Asian culture, the Asian community at Penn at that time as well, it was a while back, but was still a very important part of campus, and diversity was a very important part of who we were at Penn and what defined the school. So it was a big deal, and I was very active in the South Asia Society and a lot of diversity-related programs.
Now, after your studies, you didn't go straight to India. You spent some time in Silicon Valley. Were you thinking back then that you wanted to go to India, to work in that market? Did you know you were headed that direction?
I'd love to say I had a master plan, but the truth is no, I didn't really. I think when I was in college and even after college working in my first job, I think I always had this sort of aspiration or this interest in issues related to India, partly because of my personal connection to the culture, but I never really understood or saw a way to connect it to my professional career path. I think it really came to me as a bit of a pleasant surprise, as an opportunity. But it was a part of my thinking, but not in any sort of concrete way. I didn't really plan for it.
You said now that your job combines the 3 things that are most important to you. Your Indian culture, your love for technology, and your desire to give back. If it only combined 2 of those 3, would it be as good? I mean, what is it about those particular mix that makes this the job that you love so much?
Well, I think, everyone feels like they can do their best when they're doing work that is very well aligned with who they are as a person and their values. And I've certainly seen that in my career. I mean, I've had professional experiences where I haven't enjoyed the work, I don't believe in what I'm doing. And I think at Google, I've always believed in what I'm doing. And so those 3 things are things that have always driven me personally, things I've cared a lot about. And to be able to find a job that allows me to bring my full self to work and be who I am and apply my energy towards something I care about has helped me, I think, do good work and really feel fulfilled about it. So that's what's made it special. And I think if it was any less than all those 3 things, it would certainly probably be a good professional experience, but it wouldn't feel as satisfying personally.
The immigrant experience, or children of immigrants, it's such a defining experience for so many of us in this room. Can you place a value on the role your own ethnic background plays in your career development? I mean, is being of Indian descent crucial to understanding the market you're working in now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think I'll also admit humbly that, and this is something I've more fully appreciated being in this job and living in India. As an Indian American, the Indian part of me is a very strong part of who I am, and I do feel very connected to my culture, and I express that in a lot of different ways. But at the same time, there's no substitute for living in that market, working in that market, and understanding the nuances and the subtleties of what it means to be Indian. So I think it helped me in the transition. It sort of helped me with a smooth landing, a relatively smooth landing. But to really be effective there, I think I've had to give even more of myself to the country, really commit to learning more about what makes India special and unique. I don't think I came to India with everything I needed to be successful. I had to do a lot more work once I landed.
I was reading about this, and I was fascinated. Earlier this year, Google India experienced massive success by carrying live the Indian Premier League cricket tournament on YouTube, which is sort of the first time something like that had been done. I think it was 50 million viewers worldwide. Is that where the company is moving, from primarily search engine status to live broadcaster?
Well, if you go back to the mission of the company, it's to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And I say that because, at least at our company, the mission statement is a very critical part of who we are. It sounds maybe trite or naive, but most of the people who work at Google really wear that on their sleeve, and it's a very purpose-driven culture. So I would say the things that we do are governed by that mission. YouTube, Gmail, Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Search, these are all products which are about organizing information, leveraging technology, leveraging the internet. If you talk about YouTube specifically, most people would know that when YouTube started, you would remember it maybe for a home video that was uploaded, or a cat on a skateboard, or something funny like that. And that's still very much a big part of what YouTube is. But I think our goal is to make sure that people can access any and all kinds of video that they enjoy, that entertains them, that they find value from. And as we think about that, there's a huge category of premium content which people enjoy, whether that's movies, music, television programs, or sports. And the format in which we distribute it can be the full-length program, clips and highlights, or even live events. So I think the IPL experience, which I was heavily involved in, and it was very personally satisfying, was our attempt to push the envelope and really test the appeal of YouTube, test the appeal of the internet for live sports. And we didn't know what to expect. Our internal predictions were far lower than what ended up happening. So I think the net result of that was that we felt very confident that sports has a home on YouTube, has a home on the internet, and we believe that live events also have a place on the internet as well. We broadcast U2's concert from the Rose Bowl in LA. We also broadcast live an Alicia Keys concert. So I think the IPL has just been the largest live event ever performed on the web, but we have other examples of it. So I think you'll see more of these kinds of things, and you'll see what Google likes to do, which is sort of push the envelope and experiment.
You talked a little bit about being able to give back in your role. So while I have you here, I want to ask you, you're uniquely positioned in a very powerful role, a very powerful company, in a country, quite literally, that the entire business world is watching right now. But for all its fetid economic growth, in India right now, half of all children are malnourished. 3/4 of the world's poorest now live in what are categorized as middle-income countries like India and Nigeria. In other words, the disparities are growing, and there is still a lot to be done. So from your position at Google India, do you think that there is any kind of responsibility for a company like that to give back to the community from which it benefits?
I think there is a responsibility. I think because of how we project ourselves and what we believe in as a company and our culture, there's a particular responsibility for Google. At the same time, I think it's really important to acknowledge that you have to earn the right to play that kind of role. India is a rich country with a long history and tradition. There are a lot of people who've committed their life to doing good work in India. And I don't think I landed in India with any kind of arrogant assumption that somehow from day one I'd be able to make a difference in a country that requires deep understanding, deep appreciation, and a real commitment and knowledge. So I would say in the first year and a half of my time in India, I actually put my head down and just worked really hard to understand the country and understand it on its own terms, not understand it based on how it's been projected in the West, not understand it because of somebody who wrote about the country. I wanted to understand it firsthand from my own experiences. So I threw myself into it, visited, spent a lot of time with people. Recently, I would say we have started to earn that right because we have demonstrated a commitment to India in applying Google's technologies to the country and the people of the country. So we do a lot of work in terms of small business empowerment, in terms of promoting free speech. And so these are some areas that we've really focused on, and also protecting the rights of the creative community. And you'll see us do more of these kinds of things.
Like so many of us in this room, you've had to find that balance between your cultures, and you've hyphenated ethnic identity like many of us. Is there a way to define where your particular balance falls, where you have to be more Indian, more American, where the balance falls for you in your career?
It's hard to quantify, it's hard to be very precise about it, but what I can say is that there are elements of who I am which are very informed by Indian culture, and there are elements that are very informed by the fact that I'm American, and I grew up in this country, and I think, you know, many of us in this room probably have been through the same process in terms of getting to a comfortable place about who we are and feeling good about who we are. And I think that's very important. I think Penn was a big part of the process for me in really becoming comfortable with who I am. And I think if you become comfortable with who you are, that's an important step, because it then means you can channel your energy into applying it into contributing and giving it to other people, professionally, personally, what have you. So I don't really know how to quantify how much of myself is Indian or American. What I do know is I think it's important to be who you are, not overreach, and appreciate what you bring to the table. So sometimes the value I might bring is an American perspective, and I don't shy away from that just because I'm in an Indian context. Sometimes what I can bring is an empathy for the particular circumstances of the Indian environment, the Indian economy, and I make sure that I bring that value to the table as well. You know, for example, like in this forum, the U.S.-India Business Council, I'm one of the only members who's actually based in India. So being able to speak kind of truth to power to actually what's going on in the ground is very helpful. And so I guess I don't think about it so much. I don't worry about quantifying it. I just know that they're both very important, and I leverage them, and I try not to overreach.
Within 10 years of completing your education, you basically landed what you described as your dream job. How do you do it? What's the secret? What advice do you have for people who are on their paths early or in the middle of their careers? How do you get to that job that you have now described as your dream job?
I think a big part of it is being really attuned and listening to yourself and understanding sort of what you're telling yourself. And what I mean by that is I spent first 4 years of my career as a strategy consultant, and I learned quite a bit, structured problem solving, general professionalism, and all the things we learn in our first job. I think, but somewhere deep down, I knew that it wasn't what I was meant to do. It wasn't what brought out the best in me. I went to business school, and I spent a summer as an investment banker, and that wasn't so hard to figure out. That was definitely not what I was meant to do. Did not enjoy it. Not meant for me. And then I made an important decision. You know, in business school, I kind of really spent a lot of time introspecting and saying, what moves me? What makes me tick? And I was able to understand that I wanted to work in a product company. I wanted to work with consumer technology and media, and that those are the things I was really passionate about. Started my career in AOL and continued to make decisions to stay in digital media. And I think it's not a coincidence that from that moment forward to my time now, my career has been largely marked by relative success because I love what I do. And you know, I'm in the shower and I think about my job. I'm in the car and I think about it, and it's not a chore. I just enjoy it. It's very natural. And I think in a broader level, you know, the way we align resources to tasks is becoming more efficient. People move to jobs that are right for them because they sit at the intersection of their interests and skills. What that means is the world is becoming a lot more competitive, and you no longer can operate in a job and deny yourself if you don't enjoy it. And there are too many people who love what they do around you to have that last too long. So I think the most important thing is for people to be honest with themselves, really be attuned to where that intersection between skills and interests exists, and then pursue it with reckless abandon.
That's good advice. Well, with that, we wanted to open it up to everyone in the room. In case anyone has questions, Shailesh has graciously agreed to answer them, so this is your chance.
I'm competing with dinners, so
I
I know it's hard. Moving to India. I remember the decision, 2007, and I was having dinner with, at that time, the woman that I worked for, and she ran Asia Pacific at that time, and she and other executives in the company had been courting me to move to India and build the operation there and run the business. And I'd actually turned it down a couple of times. And it just didn't feel right. I wasn't in the right place in my life. I wasn't ready to kind of commit fully. And I think because India is a big part of who I am, my culture, I didn't want to do it injustice. If I did it, I wanted to do it well, and I wanted to give my full self and energy to it. And then we were having dinner again one evening, and we were friends. And the topic, the dinner was not about going to India and taking the job, and it just came up. She said, so how are things going? And I said, well, I'm feeling kind of restless. I've been in the US, in San Francisco for 7 years, and I'm just feeling antsy. I'm looking for a new challenge. And then being the good manager that she is, Shailesh says, so does that mean you'd be ready to reconsider going to India? And then the dinner just went into a different direction, and we finally decided that it was the right time, and I was ready to do it. And to be honest, I tell people, as much as India and the culture is an important part of who I am, if somebody bet me money in 2005 when I joined Google that I would be working in India, I'd be a very poor man. I would have lost that bet. It wasn't a part of my plans. I wasn't prepared for it. But at that moment in time, it felt like the right thing to do. And literally within 3 weeks, I'd moved to India. And it was just a whirlwind experience. And before I knew it, I was finding a place to live and dealing with all kinds of things. And I think that's, maybe a lot of you can connect with that. The decisions we make are not necessarily fully planned. They just feel right. And at that moment in time, you look at the set of choices you have and you pick one. So I think that's one experience. The other one more recently would be this IPL project that we did where we had no reason to believe any of it would be successful, and we just went for it. We're passionate about it. We thought it was the right thing to do. We wanted to make it happen. And if it was a failure, we said, we'll move on. We just did it. Thank you.
Mike, go ahead.
Can you talk about the different ways Asians use the internet, different than us Americans?
Yeah. We're a data-driven company, so I'll talk about data because I think if you start with data, there's truth in that, right? The numbers don't lie to some degree. So people, I think, in Asia, and some part of it, I don't know how much of it is Asian and how much of it is just a relatively new relationship to the internet, I think are still kind of warming up to the full measure of what's possible on the internet. So e-commerce is not that big an activity. If you look at how people behave on the internet, it's very content-oriented. It's very entertainment-driven. China, as some of you may know, has a huge online gaming culture. A lot of that's sourced from the fact, we believe, that young people in China don't have a lot of other alternative outlets for entertainment and enjoyment. And so gaming has become this wonderful way to escape and have fun. And it's actually a communal experience because people tend to play games in cyber cafes. In India, people talk about the ABC of India. It's astrology, Bollywood, and cricket. And so these are three things that really govern, how people spend their time. And it's a very diverse country. And if you go across the country, people do enjoy different things. But you do find that those things are very popular. At the same time, there's a strong cultural bias, I think, in India for utility. There's a very precious focus on price value. And people want to make sure they're getting value for whatever it is they do. So matrimonial sites in India are very, very popular. So they've found a way to introduce workflow websites that help you precisely match boys and girls. And in a culture where arranged marriages are still somewhat common, this is a tool that has become wildly popular with parents. It's a more efficient way to connect, men and women. Job sites, job classified sites for a country where finding a job is so important. Of course, being educated, as most of us understand, is very important to the Asian culture, but why do we care about that? We care about that because it's a means to a better quality of life. And you can only achieve a better quality of life if you have a job. So the search for a job is everything. So being able to have a resource where you can go see what's available and it gives you a better chance at quality of life is really, really important. Korea, K-pop, for those who are familiar with Korean pop, huge, not just in Korea, but across Asia. So some of the work we've done in YouTube, presenting K-pop to the region has been important. We just recently launched a very popular girl band in Korea on YouTube, and will.i.am for the Black Eyed Peas was so impressed when he saw the music video on YouTube, he presented a response video where he agreed to produce them. So this is something else that we're really focused on, which is giving better distribution and putting a spotlight on Asian creative talent. We don't think there's enough distribution and enough awareness for creative talent in Asia. And we think YouTube is going to be that mechanism that helps people see what Asians are capable of creatively.
So you're getting into the girl band business in Korea is what
Big
you're saying.
time.
I wanted to clarify. Yeah.
You talked earlier about how you chose to go to Penn. I was curious about, how did the Penn experience shape, your character going forward? How did it lay the foundations for the position you're in now, for how you make decisions, how you interact with people? I mean, I guess the uniquely Penn thing is a college thing. I'm trying to say, I don't know, how the Penn experience shaped
Yeah.
future experience.
Penn is a very special place, and I really, really loved my experience here, and I care a lot about this school, and I think it's unique. I now know, I believe, that no two universities are equal. You really have to invest the time. If you have children, or if you have friends or nephews and nieces who are thinking about college, it's not a commodity. I mean, there is a right fit for an individual and a school. I was lucky, not because I knew it, it just worked out well for me. This was a perfect fit for me. Again, reconciling my Indian and American heritage and having a place that valued diversity and gave me a community big enough among South Asians and Asians more broadly where I could get comfortable with who I was, very defining for me. Having a school that was big enough where you had a microcosm of the world's cultures here and people studying all kinds of things, really exposed you to the world, so it allowed you to take your identity and test it, right? Test it in interactions with people from around the world. That was really important for me. I also think on the side of failures, I don't think we talk enough about that. I didn't do a very good job modulating my ambition and my interests. In a place like Penn, which is like being a kid in a candy store, there's just too much to do here. There are too many clubs, there are too many events, there are too many people. And what I learned in part through some of my early failures is that you have to find the right balance between doing what you want to do academically and extracurricularly, but giving yourself a chance for success and not overdoing it. I mean, there were some quarters where I was taking 5 and 6 classes, involved in 3 and 4 activities, and it really burnt me out. And I realized that I had to find the right balance. So I think in a whole host of ways, Penn was very, very defining for me personally and professionally, but not just because of what I loved about it, but also some of the personal, challenges that I faced.
Matt, go ahead.
My name's Matthew Posada, past introduction too. I want to ask you as an Indian American and as also someone that's working in the IT industry in India, and take advantage of the fact that we also have Amna here from NBC,
Uh-oh.
to ask about the new NBC TV show Outsourced. And if you had seen this TV show and what it actually tells us about what the United States, what Americans know about India, and how it may be being received there in India right now.
Great question. So it's funny because I had a conversation about that show at lunch earlier today before I came to campus. I haven't seen the show, first off. I've seen a movie called Outsourced, and I don't know if it's based on that. There was a small indie film called Outsourced.
It's based on this.
Okay, it is. Okay. So I'll speak to what I've heard secondhand. It's a major qualifier, so I don't want to bash the show. But what I understand is I think secondhand that there are a reasonable number of stereotypical images of Indians presented in the characters in the show. I think it's a shame, it's disappointing if that's true. I think it also reflects a general lack of awareness in the US about the richness of India. And I can say this, and it has nothing to do with the show, but I actually see in my position so many people from around the world come to India to do business, to want to understand. I was at a dinner with James Cameron 6 months ago to come and talk about Avatar, and he had an interaction with Amir Khan, who's a very famous actor in India. And they talked about cultural exchange. And there are a lot of people who keep coming to India, and I keep meeting them. The CEO of Levi Strauss, I had dinner with him 3 weeks ago. He wanted to understand more about India. And what you find is Americans systematically understand less about India than other cultures. The British culture, because of an obvious historical relationship, Germans, Chinese, Koreans. If you believe India is important to the world, culturally, socially, economically, I think America systematically has a lot of work to do to catch up. The Lufthansa flight from Frankfurt to India is full all the time. The Korean Air flight from Seoul to India is booked all the time. LG, Samsung, multi-billion-dollar businesses in India. Nokia, most significant strategic market for them outside of their core markets is India. $4 billion business in India. So I'm broadening it out. I'm broadening my commentary out from the show. But I worry that that is just a reflection of something far more important, which is a disconnect with a very important market and country in the world. And it reflects a need with a sense of urgency to invest far more.
My name is Paul. I'm not a Penn grad. I'm actually Amna's husband, so I promise.
Is he allowed to ask a question?
I'll allow it. I will allow it. Yeah.
This question is not plants. I just wondered if you could talk a bit about, and not suggesting this is necessarily true for India, but being a part of a company whose currency is information and the free flow of information, operating in countries or in a region for whom that isn't necessarily a threat, but is something that is new and is at least something that raises eyebrows.
Yeah. So on my, literally, I'm not making this up, on my flight to India, I happened to be reading and finished Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And I found that that book was extremely germane to my job, more so than I even appreciated flying to India. Because what you realize is that social norms, what's permissible, what's not permissible, and then how that translates into laws and rules and policy, there's a very wide spectrum. It is not black or white. You're not a democracy or not a democracy, okay? And India is a democracy. It's the largest democracy in the world. But its particular brand of democracy is very informed by history, socioeconomic context. So a lot of my job is not just involved in running the day-to-day business of Google, but because of our cultural relevancy, I acknowledge that we also play a role in thinking about the socioeconomic implications of freedom of speech and open platforms for discourse, particularly in a country like India where you have, I would say the prime minister position of India is the most difficult governance job in the world. You have a country of 75%, 70% poor, 45% illiterate, multiple religions, dramatic differences in inequalities in wealth and poverty. It's a tinderbox that has to be managed very, very carefully. Every border is challenged. Every border partner is a nation where they have some disputes. And you're trying to have a bigger presence in the global sphere of decision-making. Very difficult job. So in India, what I've spent a lot of time on is evangelizing and educating. We've trained the cybercrime units of every major state in India on social networking, on blogging, what it means, how to think about freedom of speech in the context of India. I gave testimony in front of Parliament on copyright law. So I do a lot of work in that arena. Now in China, which is a somewhat well-told story, China has a very particular, again, socioeconomic context, governance model, and we made a decision several years ago to engage. And we engaged on the understanding that we'd be able to operate there and put our best foot forward, and we would do so in a way that was somewhat sensitive to the requirements and the operating environment of China. And over time, the way that quid pro quo evolved changed, and our founders, and this is our founders, really was no one else, felt that they had to take a different stance because we're very committed to user rights, freedom of expression, the open sharing of information, distribution of information. We fundamentally believe that's at the heart of better quality of life, and general progress in society and empowerment of people. At the same time, China is a very important country, very important market. I spent a lot of time there, and I think it's an amazing place. And I'm in awe and have a tremendous amount of respect for what's been accomplished, and I know what will be accomplished. And so, I think what the lesson learned is, in my personal opinion, is you can't look at technology in a vacuum when you do what we do, because what we do affects individuals at a very personal day in, day out level. And so we have to understand the context within which our technology is presented and manage accordingly. That was a long answer, but it's an important question. I don't know if that answered what you were looking for directly.
Yes, all the way back. There you go.
So my question is based on the fact that you're a tech company, tech's really becoming involved in all our lives. We're exercising with the TV, we're texting more than calling. Do you think that the fear that there's a sacrifice to our raw, the basics, social human interaction, do you think that fear exists, and if that is justified, and what Google's plans are to verify those things?
Well, I want to go back to a simple concept which actually governs and has bigger philosophical implications. Opt-in, right? The notion of opt-in governs everything we do, and it's a very powerful concept. Opt-in is not just the mechanical checking of a box at the bottom of the terms and condition. It has huge principal ramifications for the interaction between a user and a service provider. And what's very important to us is that everything that Google provides is opt-in. Because if it's opt-in, we put the responsibility and the onus of choice where it needs to be, which is with the individual. So ultimately, you each have to make choices about what you want to use and what you don't want to use and the manner in which you use it. And we think personal responsibility is an important concept. At the same time, I think it's an important and relevant discussion to have, broadly speaking, not particular to Google, about what is the evolving role of technology in our lives, and what does that mean for us. And I think, we all live here together in a kind of a shared experience that is humanity. And the things we talk about are the things we care about, the things that are on our mind. And that's clearly one of the most important topics I think we should be talking about. But I don't know if I subscribe to notions of fear or not fear. I think, again, every individual is different. I'd like to believe every individual is making choices consciously about what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And I know I'm very comfortable in the fact that I can say that when it comes to Google services, anybody in this room can stop using any of our services like that. And I can't stop you. I can't encourage you. I can't force you to use it. And at the end of the day, if a collection of people choose to use something, maybe it creates value, whether it's Facebook, Google, what have you.
Yes, go ahead.
Recently there was some news about how, well, one thing I thought was that the value of information is particularly, and particularly Google, is the purity of the information, the ability to be able to search according to the rules of the searching community. But around the BP oil spill, it was interesting because there were rumors about how BP might be able to manipulate the search engine and other ways in which, corporate, people with money could potentially buy up and manipulate search engines. Is this something that it's sort of beyond, it's not technically, maybe not within your scope, but certainly from a principle point of view, is this something that you thought about, and if so,
I can say, sorry to interrupt, I can say categorically that there is no editorial function on search results, and there is no corporate interest or outside interest that influences search results. And that is sacrosanct to the company, because if there is an integrity in the results that you see, if you cannot believe that the results you see reflect what is the correct answer for you, then I'm not sure that those search results can be meaningful or valuable for you or for anybody. So that is sacrosanct, and I think it's at the very heart of search that you are able to look at those results and believe that they are objective and not influenced unduly by any other agenda other than what is the right answer for you. And Larry, and Sergey say that the job on search is far from done, even though we have 11 years of experience now with at least Google search. The job of search is not done until every man and woman conducts a search, gets one result, and that result is always correct. And so we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to hire a lot of engineers until we get to that result. So we have a long way to go. And so there's a lot of legs and there's a lot of headroom in technological improvement in the algorithm to get to that end goal. Does that answer your question? Well, let's answer your question. What was that? What aspect is not addressed?
Is it incorrect that there
It's incorrect.
It is incorrect.
It's incorrect. I want to be very clear that, and for those who don't know, this is a very informed, intelligent, kind of hip crowd. But what I will say is just to reinforce it, the organic results on search are algorithmically determined. There is no editorial function, no outside agenda, other than what the algorithm is hoping to determine, which is what's right for you. On the right-hand side, which is clearly demarcated, and also to some degree at the top of the page sometimes, you will see what we call sponsored links. And whether it's BP or several other companies, our business is advertising. That's how we make money, and that's how we fund our research. That's how we fund product innovation and development. So BP and a whole host of other companies pay a lot of money to advertise on Google, and their advertisements appear in those sponsored links. And those are clearly demarcated. So to the extent that maybe what you read is that BP is aggressively advertising on Google, that may be the case. But that is separate and distinct from search results.
I think with that, you've come all this way. We are going to allow you to eat, and I see dinner is being served.
I think other people want to eat too, so good.
Thank you so much for your time, ladies
Thank
and
you very
gentlemen.
much. Thank you. Thanks a lot.